Today is a rainy day in Louisville, Kentucky. Just down the road here, we're on our way now to Cave Hill Cemetery, and this is where the final resting place of Mia Zapata is. And we're going to talk a little bit about her life, about what happened to her, and the stardom that was cut very, very short. I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory while we're on our way before we get into the cemetery. But Mia Zapata, she was born in 1965 in Chicago. She was raised here in Louisville. She enrolled in a college in Ohio, and she formed a band called the Gits. And in 1989, they decided to move out to Seattle, Washington. They had a grunge scene going on there. A lot of bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, a lot of big name bands came out of there, and she was destined for stardom. She had a very interesting and unique voice, and they were building up a very good audience there. Now, when she got to Washington, Mia found a job at a local bar, and the other band members in the Gits, they moved into an abandoned house, and they called it the Rat House. Now, they released a series of very well received singles on local independent record labels from 1990 to 1991. And the following year, they released their first album, and their audience was getting bigger and bigger, and they would perform a lot more shows, and they were becoming fairly big stars in the Seattle grunge scene. But they started making a second album, and that one ended up being released after the death of Mia. Mia was known to have a very magnetic personality. She drew a lot of people together, a lot of people that you wouldn't necessarily think would be friends. She was just a very, very well liked person in all circles, and everybody that knew her seemed to, just speak the world of her. We're driving over to where her grave is right now. But on this last stretch, I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened. Now, this all happened on July 7th of 1993, around 2 a.m. Mia Zapata left the Comet Tavern in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle, and she was staying in a studio space in the basement of an apartment building located about a block away. But she stopped to briefly visit a friend who lived on the second floor, and this was the last time that she was ever seen alive. Now, it's said that she may have walked a few blocks west or north to a friend's apartment, or may have decided just to take a long walk around her home before she went back. Now, an hour and a half later, 3:30 a.m., Mia's body was discovered near the intersection of 24th Avenue South and South Washington Street, and she had been beaten and strangled, and it's believed that she encountered her attacker shortly after 2:15 a.m., Her body initially wasn't identified because she had no identification on her when she was found, but the odd part of this is that she was actually identified after the medical examiner. He was a fan and had been to several of the Gits shows, and he recognized her. Now, according to the medical examiner, if she hadn't been strangled, she would have passed away anyway from the internal injuries suffered from the beating. But the beating was extensive. An autopsy showed that it showed evidence of a struggle in which she suffered blunt impact to her abdomen and a lacerated liver. Just a very brutal crime. At the time, they had no idea who did this. The case went unsolved for quite a while, and the Seattle music community, including members of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, they helped raise money to hire a private investigator for 3 years. And they didn't really have any breaks in the case. The funds kind of dried up. But the investigator, a lady by the name of Lee Heron, continued to investigate on her own time. Now, it was 2003. There was a Florida fisherman named Jesus Mezquia who had come from Cuba in 1980, and he was arrested and charged in connection with Zapata's murder based on DNA evidence. Now, this was a little bit before DNA evidence was a big thing, and a DNA profile was extracted from saliva found in bite marks on Zapata's body, and it was kept cold in storage until technology was developed. Now, this is the final resting place of Mia Zapata. But Jesus Mezquia, his DNA was entered into the National CODIS database after he was arrested in Florida for burglary and domestic abuse in 2002. And he had a history of violence towards women, including domestic abuse, burglary, assault, battery. All of his ex-girlfriends and his wife had filed reports against him. There was a report of him for indecent exposure on file against him in Seattle within 2 weeks of Zapata's murder. But there was no known prior link between the two of them, so it seemed to be completely random. The prosecution's theory was that Jesus saw Zapata leave the bar and followed her a short distance before he attacked her. She had headphones covering her ears, so she would have been unaware of anybody coming up behind her or sneaking on her. But he grabbed her, dragged her to his car where he assaulted her in the back seat. And he was convicted by a jury in 2004 finally and sentenced to 36 years in prison. Jesus did pass away in 2021 at the age of 66. But it's just terribly tragic what happened to this poor lady. Mia Catherine Zapata. Only 27 years old. She really did have her whole life ahead of her. But that's all there is for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.